Oh, in case you're wondering, I glued some foam to my hood so I wouldn't scratch my roof anymore. What's up, everybody? It's been a minute since I've done a video. You can see the Camaro's a little bit apart right now. I was doing some paint work, touching up a couple spots and hiding some sins and repainting this channel where the T-tops are going to mount up. So as soon as that's all cured, those will go back on. What I want to do today is work on the PCV or the breather system for the car. So the car is currently set up to use a PCV valve here on the passenger side of the valve cover. That runs over to this generic eBay catch can, which then runs into the back of the motor. And the other side here has a breather on it that runs up to the front corner of the car there. So to give you a little background on the trouble I've had with the breather and the PCV system on this car. When I first got the motor from Randy, he had been running a dual carburetor setup, which was really, really cool, but it wasn't what I was going to run. And he included a breather tank, or like a catch can, and some lines. And they were on a set of Corvette valve covers, and I set everything up, valve cover and breather wise, just like he had it. The two ran off of the passenger and the driver's side into a Y into the same can that's actually sitting in the front corner of that car. I ran into a couple problems. Number one, I had no PCV, so I was basically trying to get the motor to breathe out through two -8 lines wide together. So it just was not enough flow out of the motor. And number two, there was no provision for a PCV. When Randy had his intake on the car, that actually had a PCV built into it, so you could pull vacuum from that. So the setup worked really well for him. Well, it wasn't working for me. I kept trying to do different things. It was pushing oil out of different spots. Wound up at Nationals the first time out with this car, having to run to Speedway Motors, which is luckily not too far from where we race in Lincoln, Nebraska, and picking up a valve cover because the Corvette covers didn't have baffles in it. It was a whole mess. So I kind of found this compromise the last time I set up the car. I put a new set of valve covers on it. I ran that one side to a PCV with a catch can and the other side to a breather. And if you're doing a street car, that's a great setup. And I would encourage everyone to do that. PCVs are not a bad thing. PCVs actually can be great for your rings. They can help seal things up. They keep the air a little bit cleaner because some of that unburnt stuff gets pulled into the intake track. So for cruisers, for daily drivers, keep all of that stuff. Well, this isn't a cruiser or a daily driver.
You're kidding.
And so I'm switching over entirely to just a breather system. So I'm going to be removing the PCV out of this, capping that off on the back of the fuel injection unit, and running just breathers. So there's a couple reasons that I'm doing this. Number one, it's not a street car. So all the advantage of a PCV go away. And that actually goes a little bit deeper. This motor draws very little vacuum at idle. So when it's sitting there idling, it's not doing a whole lot. It may not even be cracking open the PCV valve. Then when it gets run at wide open throttle or even just increased throttle, there's no vacuum. So it's not really doing what it would normally do in a street car anyway. So we're going to remove some of that complication, get rid of it. Number two, because it is a race car, oil vapor lowers the octane of gas. Now this motor is set up to run pump gas 93, but we want to tune it a little more to the ragged edge. And if I'm pulling in oil vapor, I could be knocking the octane level down. Don't want to do that. And the third is just to clean things up, simplify things. So let me show you what I've got going on here, and then we'll start putting it together. So I ordered up a mess of stuff. Now, most of this comes from Vibrant. This is not sponsored. It's just they had what I was looking for. So what I've got is some Dash 12 AN rubber hose, a couple fittings, including some bulkhead fittings, and these nifty little guys. These are breather inserts for a valve cover that include their own baffling. So what I'll be able to do is take that baffling that's under that PCV and it's under that guy over there, take that baffling off. I'll be able to use this to create a new baffle. It'll all connect up with Dash 12, and I'll have one catch can where it lives now over in that corner, and I'm going to be putting another one over here next to the coolant overflow. So let's start to take things apart and see where we get. So here is the additional breather that I'm putting in. It is an exact match for the one that's already in the car. It's a Jazz 1-quart breather tank, and it comes with a Dash 8 bulkhead fitting. Well, because I'm going to Dash 12, that won't work, so I ordered up that guy right there. So that's our Dash 12 bulkhead fitting. You can see it looks the same as Dash 8. It's just a lot bigger, especially when you get to the flow side. So there's one, and there's the other. So that's going to move a lot more air into this tank. So I'm going to go ahead and open this hole up. We'll install this bulkhead, and we'll get moving on with the rest of the project. Okay, so confession time. Drilling that hole, super easy. The confession part, because of how I want to mount this, I should have drilled that hole over here and closed up the hole that came with it. The good news is, this is an exact duplicate of the one that's in the car currently, so I'm going to pull the one that's out of the car, cover the factory hole that comes with it, and drill that, and they'll just switch sides. So, yeah, that's what I get for not paying attention. Go ahead and judge me for my eBay racing parts. It's not like you haven't done it yourself. All right, well, I really didn't bother filming the modifications of this. This is the catch can that was in on the other side of the car already. It had the smaller Dash 8 fitting, so I had to put the Dash 12 on it. That went great, but because of how I want to mount these, I wanted it to go out the other direction, and there's mounting, I don't know, bosses in here with threads on one side, but there aren't on the other. So I just made a quick little block off for the site that had the original Dash 8. So remove the fitting, little RTV, little aluminum, couple rivets, good to go. All right, so I went ahead and pulled the driver's side valve cover off. So I'm going to show you all, here is the bulkhead Dash 8 that was adapted to this valve cover, and you can see if I flip it over, it still has the internal baffle that ships with this valve cover in there. I just kind of bent it out a little bit so it would fit, but that whole piece is going to come out, and that's going to get replaced by our new baffled bulkhead breather fitting thing. So let's get that out and get the new one in. So this fitting is actually pretty cool. It's two pieces. It's got an O-ring that goes on the bottom. This is the Dash 12 component that's going to come up through the valve cover. Then this gets tightened down, and there's a little set screw to make sure nothing walks away. It fits the hole in the valve cover perfectly, and actually it's going to give me way more clearance than I was having before. When you consider, you know, that's the surface of the valve cover there. That's probably a better comparison. You have way more clearance to the valve train. Not that I'm running into an issue with it, but if I switch out or want to put girdles on this or something, this is going to work a lot better. So let's slap this on there. So there it is, all installed. Pretty simple, straightforward. I think it's going to work really well in there. If I'm worried I'm going to have an oil control issue, I could modify that baffle and put it back over, but I think this is going to work out just fine. Got it as tight as I could, O-ring squish. We'll throw this back on the car, and then we'll talk about the driver's side We're going to add something else there. I am extra excited to report that I was a little worried about the height. And hopefully you can see that, but I've got plenty of clearance to the air cleaner. The hose is going to come right off of there, shoot to there. It's going to be a really nice setup. Look really good. All right, I got the driver's side done. That's the easy part. A little sneak peek of the passenger side rocker setup. But now we need to move to the driver's side, and this one's going to be a little bit different. I'm not just going to replace the breather. This is where the PCV was. I'm not just going to put that fitting in. I also got an oil cap so that it's easy to put oil in the motor. So I'm going to take this nice valve cover and ruin it by drilling a hole in it. Anyway, let's check back in a minute and see how bad I screw this up. All right, well, that wasn't scary at all, but now we have two holes. Here's the original one that the breather's going to hook to, and that's the one for our new oil fill. So let me get this all put together, and we'll see it on the car. Okay, passenger side is all done. I've got my new 12AN breather fitting in place, a new 710 cap. Minor confession, when I drilled the hole for the oil cap, I drilled a little too big. No big deal. Flipped the valve cover over, put the oil cap in the hole that was in the valve cover, and then the one I drilled, this fitting has a generous O-ring. It's really big, so it totally blocked everything up. Totally good. So really happy that wraps that up. I really wanted to work hard to make sure that this was in line with the fitting on the other side, but I forgot. If you take a look, you can kind of see small blocks are offset. The head, or even, well, really the cylinders on the driver's side are ½ inch more forward than the ones on the passenger side. So glad I went to all that trouble to make sure that they would line up. But anyway, that's the hard part. Now we can get the cans put in place, some lines made, and this will be all done. I spared you all the process of making the lines. These are really easy. They're just push fit. But I want to show you, we now have our new breather set up in place. So here's the passenger side. Runs down along this way to our breather tucked up back there. Getting to that fitting down there sucked, but oh well. So yeah, so this one runs like this. And the driver's side looks the same. Just like the passenger side, runs down into the catch can, and there's some zip ties to keep it a little bit off the radiator, give it some room, because also what would a project on this channel be without a couple zip ties? So I'm sure there are a few folks that are thinking this is pretty elaborate for just a breather setup, and you're not wrong. I mean, there are simpler and cheaper ways to do this, but this is really kind of a phase one. The intent is gonna get this set up, going down the road, car's working well, and in the future, I wanna do a true vacuum setup where we have a vacuum pump that's pulling air out of the crankcase, letting the rings seal a little bit better, some other stuff. So that's all gonna happen, but they're expensive, and really I just need to drive this car. It's done 3 events, so we're going to the dyno soon here, I think in about a month. Definitely will take you along with when we do that dyno setup. Don't know when I'm gonna get a haircut. I know the dyno will be happening before then, but once the dyno is done, it's corner balance, a little bit of alignment stuff, and we're ready to rip for hopefully a pretty decent 2021 season. So thanks for checking this out, and we'll see you next time.